Story number 1. Strange phone calls. Sure, anyone can stay home alone and experience almost anything, but what happens when that something turns into your worst nightmare? Here's to hoping I can chill you to the bone with my experience as much as it chilled me. For some quick background, this took place around 2002 in rural Pennsylvania. I'm female, by the way, and I was 15 years old. I'd been staying home alone with my cat Fluffy for the weekend. One evening, I'd been up late working on homework when the phone started ringing. Considering it was midnight, I found it odd that someone would be calling this late. Still, I figured that perhaps it might have been my mom or dad checking up on me. That was odd, however, as they called me an hour ago and they told me they were going to bed. So I ended up ignoring the call, thinking they could just leave a message. Whatever, it was most likely just a wrong number. Hey, it happens to all of us, right? Not even 2 minutes later, the phone rings again, and again, and yes, again. That was odd. Maybe something happened with my mom or my dad, but why would someone be calling this late multiple times? So, I make my way downstairs and I head over to the kitchen. Hello? Mom? Dad? Is that you guys calling me? There is nothing but silence. I end the call and start making my way upstairs, but yet again, the phone starts ringing. Ugh, I'm so annoyed at this point. What does this person want? I just want to go to bed. Hello? Who is this, and why are you calling me so late? Hey there, girl. I see that you're home alone. Why don't you open the door and let me inside? I instantly got the chills hearing that, but I figured it was just some bored teenagers calling random houses. Oh, yeah, right. I'm not falling for that. Prove you're here then. I figured this would be when I caught them in their lie and they would laugh and that would be the end, but instead, I started to hear knocking at the back door. Do I have your attention now? I then was able to hear someone laughing outside like a madman. I remember freezing, thinking that some strange creeper or home intruder was about to break in. Instantly, I dial for the police as I tiptoe around making sure all the doors and windows were locked. Since I do live in the middle of nowhere, it would take them a minimum of 20 minutes to arrive. That's what I found so odd about this. Who in their rightful mind comes to a house in the middle of nowhere? Regardless, I go and grab my dad's .45 from the closet and I wait for help to arrive. All I'm able to hear is the sounds of knocking on windows and someone yelling at me to open the door. This was when I get the courage to look out my second-story window. Sure enough, there is a man in a hoodie walking around my property. After watching him for what seemed like an eternity, I saw as he made his way down our dirt driveway. Suddenly, my house is illuminated with the headlights of his pickup, and he takes off at a high speed. Officers arrived about 15 minutes later, but by then, it's already too late. So I file a report and I tell them about what had taken place. They told me they would patrol the area and see if they could find them. In the end, I figured some guy had a little too much to drink and he had stumbled upon my house. But how did that explain the phone call? That's when I remembered my dad putting our number up at a local coffee shop. They have this board in which people put their numbers and emails on. My dad had put our house phone number because he was looking for clients for his art business. This is the early 2000s and we really didn't have cell phones yet. Something else to mention was the number of times I'd gone to that coffee shop. There were times I would notice this older gentleman, I'd say late 30s, and he would stare over at me and follow me around town. One time I had to call security because he had followed me into his store and wouldn't leave me alone. So I'm guessing in my time in town talking about my dad's art business, he had somehow learned that was my house phone. After that, I'm pretty sure he did some searching around and he found out where I lived. Okay, as I said, this isn't the end. Fast forward almost a year after, and I hadn't seen that guy anymore. At this point, I'd entered my junior year of high school and I was busy with softball. One evening, I was home alone and I'd spent most of the night watching movies. At around 2 a.m., the phone starts ringing. So I get up, but it says the number is restricted. That's when I remember the phone calls from almost a year ago. I started to get nervous, but I ignored the call. Almost immediately after the first call, the phone rings again, and I pick it up. Hello, guess who's back? Don't tell me you already forgot about me. I'm not done with you just yet. Look, I don't know who you are, but stop calling me and leave me alone. I'm gonna call the cops if you don't stop. He seemingly laughs this off as I start looking out the windows. I can't see anyone outside, so I thought maybe he was calling from a different location. Regardless, I go and grab my dad's 45 yet again, and I look out the upstairs window. In case you're wondering, I was already on the line with officers. All of a sudden, headlights approach my home, and I can see what looks to be like the same pickup as before. After that, they stop, and someone in a hoodie steps out and walks over to the back of the car. I can then see what looks like a crowbar in his hands as he slowly starts making his way over to my house. Let's just say that I made sure to give him a wonderful warning. I aim and pop. A warning shot his way instantly sends him running back to his car. He pretty much does a complete 180 and drives off. Again, officers arrive, but only this time they have a different message. As it turned out, they saw something as they got over here. One officer noticed a vehicle that looked like the one I had described. It was parked about half a mile from my home, and it was abandoned. So one of the cruisers stays back and checks the surrounding area. In summary, they found someone attempting to get into the neighbor's home, and he had a crowbar on him. Yup, it turned out to be the same guy. I guess he didn't want to take any chances trying to break into my home, so he went for the next one he could find. And yeah, that was pretty much it. So, my advice to anyone staying home alone is this: try not to, and if you are, make sure you're prepared for anything. Story number 2. The last time we go into the woods. Sure, I can share one of my scary experiences with you. It was a year ago, and I was staying with my family in Seward, Alaska. I'd moved down to attend university in California, but for the summer, I went back home. Summer in Alaska is pretty nice. Temperatures usually average around 60 degrees, and we have sunlight pretty much all day. This was wonderful because I myself enjoyed camping and exploring. So, one summer afternoon, my brother and I drove about an hour from town to go camp out in the wilderness. First day goes by fairly normal, and it's now evening. My brother and I had set up our campsite, and we had a nice little campfire going. This isn't really important to the story, but my brother and I make some of the best chili. We sat there eating and talking when all of a sudden, we started to hear sounds in the nearby woods. Of course, we're out in nature, so the chances it's a bear are quite possible. Even so, we had plenty of bear spray on us, and we never had an issue with them. As a precaution, my brother and I are armed so we could take action as a last resort. As we sat in the tent waiting, the sound started to get further away until all fell silent. Deciding it was just a curious animal, we forgot about it and we started to get ready for bed. Fast forward a couple of hours later and it's around 4 a.m. I suddenly had the urge to use the restroom, so I get up to head outside. Something was different as I made my way around to a nearby tree. I could see what looked like fresh tracks. But here's the thing. These didn't look like tracks from a wolf or even a bear. These were footprints made from boots. That sent me chills because we were in the middle of nowhere in the Alaskan wilderness. As far as we knew, no one was out here for miles on end. Creepy, but we ourselves have boots. I figured my brother David had woken up before me to use the restroom and he had made the prints himself. Whatever, I go and do my business, but then I hear something. It's hard to make out at first, but it sounds like people are arguing in the distance. I can see what looks like flashlights shining through the tree line next. Moments later, there is a loud pop that echoes through the woods. Then, all falls silent. Weird, but I was honestly hoping they didn't know we were here. After all, our campsite was hidden since the tent had camouflage over it. You would really have had to have gotten close enough in order to see us. Yeah, my brother and I were sneaky like that. Fast forward a few hours later, and my brother and I are making some coffee. Hey, did you wake up and use the restroom last night, David? Nah, man, I fell asleep hard. I was tired from all that walking we did. Why? What's up? So, you didn't even hear the arguing in the distance or even that loud pop? Arguing? What do you mean? Sorry, I didn't hear a thing. Well, look, come over here and let me show you these prints. You're telling me you didn't make these? What? Nah, that's really weird. Hey, do you think someone was out here? Well, that's what I'm thinking since I heard voices last night. This made my brother and I a bit nervous, but we figured another family was out here camping. Either way, we decided we would return back home since it had started to rain. Fast forward some time later, and we were about a mile from our car. As my brother and I are talking, we see something in the distance. From the looks of it, it looks like an abandoned old RV in the middle of an opening. Yeah, we should have just continued on, but my brother thought it was pretty neat and he wanted to check it out. Though looking back, this was a terrible idea. We approached it and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It looked like your typical abandoned location. Hey bro, wanna see if there's anything in there we can take? Maybe just a small souvenir or something. Okay, but let's just be careful. There could be a bear or something else hiding in there. Well, it wasn't a bear or even a wolf that was waiting us. Instead, we seemed to have woken up a couple of strangers. Soon enough, we have barrels facing us as we start backing up thinking that this is where it ended.
What are you two kids doing out here? No one should be here other than us.
Look, sorry, we didn't know anyone was here. Please don't do it. Look, we'll just leave and we won't say a word, please.
You kids are lucky we're feeling nice. Don't ever mention you saw us here to anyone, ever, or you'll regret it.
Yes, we won't say anything. Your secret? It's safe with us. With that, my brother and I book it the rest of the way out of the woods. I'm not exactly sure who those two were and what they were doing out there in the middle of nowhere, but to say my brother and I got lucky is an understatement. That could have been the very last time we saw the woods. So yeah, the woods are an amazing place to explore, but when you see something abandoned, make sure to leave it alone. You never know who might be hiding and waiting for you. Story number 3. The Secret Room in the Factory. When I was in college, so back in the late 90s, I used to be part of this club who would go camping every month. Normally, we would go into the mountains, or we would camp near some of the nearby lakes. This story, however, talks about a time I went exploring in an abandoned factory. I later realized that going into places that said no trespassing was probably a bad idea. With that, let's get started. One day during club activities, we were discussing where we wanted to go and camp next. We were planning a trip to go to Yellowstone National Park, but the thing is, we lacked the necessary funds. We did eventually go a year later, but for now, we wanted something else to do. Being just a club of 10 members, we figured we could take this month off and save some money for our next trip. That left my friend Emily and I with a plan. Not only did we enjoy camping, but we were huge fans of urban exploring. The only thing is we had pretty much explored all the places around us and we wanted something different to see. So, after some extensive research, we looked up this small factory that had recently closed in the past 6 months. It was about an hour drive away, but we figured it would satisfy our much-needed curiosity. With that, my friend and I made our way out into the desert until we reached an unmarked road. 3 miles later, we can see a facility up ahead of us. Sure enough, we can see the factory as it sat idle in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, the place was a mess. There was trash all on the ground and graffiti written everywhere. The windows themselves were broken and some of the roof was missing. Spooky, but neat nonetheless. So, with our flashlights, we start making our way inside. And boy, what a sight this place was. From the outside, it looked pretty small and boring, but in here, oh man, you could easily get lost. The place was absolutely dark, and the only light we had came from the broken windows and our flashlights. Don't tell me I was the only one who just saw that. What, the shadow? Yeah, I saw it too. Hey, you think somebody's here? I don't know, let's find out. Hey, hello? Is anybody down there? No response. Strange, but we figured maybe it was a trick of the eye. After calming ourselves down, we then make our way over to a set of stairs, and these led into what was a basement. Ugh, I can still remember the vibe down there. It just gave off that feeling of having eyes on you. I don't know, we just stepped over the murky rainwater and we just couldn't help but feel that. Speaking of creepy vibes, we saw a bunch of graffiti with different messages. Things like, "Get out," and "Do you dare find us?" Yeah, no kidding. However, teenagers love to come and explore places like this, so whatever. Emily and I now make our way down the basement hallway and we finally reach the end. Well, nothing down here. What do you say we just turn back and head to the roof? Maybe we get some awesome photos of the sunset up there. Yeah, I like that idea. Let's go. As one last random idea, Emily throws a large rock against a piece of wood. This causes it to fall over, revealing an opening. Sure enough, we shine our flashlights inside, and we notice what appeared to be like another room. Cool. Did we stumble upon some hidden room, perhaps? Well, it sure seemed like it, and now we make our way inside. Big mistake. We shine our flashlights around, and we can see all these creepy drawings and words written all over the walls. That wasn't what sent us out running. We begin to hear movement in a dark corner. Soon enough, there is a tall figure standing over us. Shining our flashlights reveals a man easily over 6'5". I put him at around 250 pounds with long hair and a beard, and he has ripped up clothing. Without thinking, Emily says, "Oh, sorry, we didn't know anybody was here. We'll just leave you be and we'll be on our way." He wasn't having any of this. He stares my friend and I down for a few seconds and he finally speaks up.
"So, you're telling me you two girls are in here all by yourselves? I guess you came to visit me then. Good. I was getting bored, and now I'm not gonna let you two leave."
He then reaches down and he grabs what appears to be like a large metal cable. I'm guessing he wasn't going to use this for any normal reasons. My friend and I book it as we push as much as we could between ourselves and this man. And let me tell you, this guy was quick. He grabbed my arm as I made my way upstairs. But luckily for me, I took martial arts classes, so thankfully I was able to get out of his grip quick. With one good kick, he falls down the stairs and my friend and I run to the entrance. I'm pretty sure he thought he would catch us easily, but he didn't know anything about my training. Safe to say we avoided going to abandoned places like that for a long time after. Story number 4. My dog saves me. So I'm female, 20 years old, and I'm currently living in California and I'm studying for my business degree. However, I want to take you back to when I lived in England. At the time, I lived in a small community, and this was back when I was 16 years old. So, we pretty much lived out in the countryside, miles away from the nearest towns and cities. My friends were always jealous of me because of the huge play area I had. Well, you can imagine that with all the fields and woods nearby, it wasn't hard to find a place to walk at. Something to note, though, is the visitors we got, and by visitors, I mean none. Seriously, anytime someone visited us, it was a family member or a friend. This is what made this encounter extra scary. So, one evening I had to return home late from school. I was at band practice and we had gotten out close to 7 p.m. By the time my parents picked me up and we went to go eat, it was almost 10 p.m. Cool, but that's when I had forgotten about Rex. Rex is my German Shepherd. He was honestly a sweetheart, and I remember all the time I spent with him. Now, normally I would walk with Rex after I got home from school, but I was really tired this evening. So I figured I'd just walk with Rex first thing tomorrow morning before school. After all, I don't start until 8:30 a.m. Fast forward to 5 in the morning next day, and Rex and I are stepping out the door. All is quiet, and it's still dark as we start nearing this set of woods. Honestly, the only sounds around us came from our footsteps and the music I had playing on my earphones. In case you're wondering, I was listening to classical music. Yeah, I know it might sound lame to most, but it was a relaxing way to start the day. We eventually get halfway through the woods when Rex suddenly takes off. This was strange because this was the first time he'd ever run off on his own. But either way, I waited there for a couple of minutes thinking he would come back. And he does, but something's different. He comes back whining and he looks scared. Really, why in the world would he come back scared? This was when I started to get a bit concerned, thinking there might be somebody out here. Regardless, we continue walking until we reach the end of the trail. I wanted to reach it because there was a water fountain I wanted to fill up. That and to let Rex drink some water. As I sat down looking at some notifications on my phone, I looked up to see Rex is growling. All the hair on his back is standing up, and something seems to be getting his attention.
"Hey, could you tell your dog to be quiet? I'm trying to work here.
I turn around, and there's a man in his late 50s stumbling out from behind some trees. He appears to have a bottle in his hand. What worried me was the fact that it sounded like he wasn't all there. Something was telling me he might have had a little too much to drink. His speech was all over the place, and his movements were impaired too. "I'm sorry, sir. My boy Rex, he gets excited when he sees somebody new. He won't hurt you, I promise." That was kind of a lie. Rex was a very smart dog, and he would protect me at a moment's notice. This guy then stares at me for what seemed like an eternity as he looks me up and down, and finally he speaks up and says,
Are you out here all alone? What's a beautiful one like you doing all alone in the woods? Hey, do you want to join me and come have some food?
Sorry, sir, but I'm okay. Rex and I have to head back home and get ready for school. Thanks for the offer." He wasn't taking a no for an answer. He angrily steps forward and then he grabs my arm.
What was that? I don't think I understood what you said. You're going to join me, whether you like it or not.
Instantly, it's like something snapped in the mind of Rex, because now he starts charging over at this guy, grabbing his other arm.
Let me go! Get this thing off of me now!
Safe to say, Rex taught that guy a valuable lesson, and he even took a piece of his jacket with him. Good job, Rex. Rex eventually lets go, and we take off. Lucky for me, I do a fair amount of running at school, so I wasn't too concerned with this guy. Not that I think he would have wanted to mess with Rex after what happened. I get home, and about 10 minutes later I call officers. They arrive about 20 minutes later, and they do a scan of the woods. After searching the woods, they found a man who had put some bandages over his arm. After questioning him, they realize it's the guy I saw an hour ago. Apparently, this guy had stolen some jewelry and money from a nearby store the other night. He was on the run, and he was hiding in the woods when I found him. I guess he tried to play it safe by acting nice at first, but let's just say Rex wasn't having any of it. So, yeah, dogs are amazing. Thanks for the help, good buddy. Story number 5. The person outside my house. This took place a couple of years ago, and after it took place, I'm still fairly nervous anytime I stay home alone. I'll begin with some quick background context. At the time, I was 26 years old, and I was living with another friend in upstate New York. Considering I wasn't looking to go back home after graduating, my friend Taylor and I got our own townhouse. Along with Taylor, we shared the home with our 2-year-old Siberian Husky Bob. Strange name for a dog, I know, but whatever. Bob would end up saving me this evening in particular, and I want to tell you all about it. It was a Saturday evening in December, and I was by myself. Taylor went to spend time with her family, and I offered to look after Bob. After all, I didn't want to be all by myself, so she didn't mind Bob staying back with me. I remember getting pretty hungry at one point and thought about using Uber Eats, but sadly, I had used all my coupons and didn't want to pay the fee for delivery. So lazy me got on a jacket and winter boots, and I drove over to Panda Express. I make my usual order of chow mein with teriyaki chicken and some egg rolls, and I head back home. Once I'm near my house, however, I noticed something strange. There was a car parked outside my home on the driveway. Far from the distance, I couldn't tell what kind of car it was, so I figured Taylor had come back home. Here's the thing, though. It wasn't Taylor's car. It was a dark blue SUV, and I was able to see somebody walking around the front of the house checking the windows. It scared me so much, I thought perhaps he was trying to break in. The guy looked really suspicious with his hoodie on, and by the sound of Bob barking in the house, this was my sign something was up. From my car, I yelled out to the man by saying, "Excuse me, sir, but was there something I could help you with this evening? You look lost."
Sorry, it's just that I was admiring your home. It's very nice. I was looking at buying a house like this one day. You know how it is."
"Really? I know how it is? No, I'm pretty sure I just caught you trying to break into my home there, pal." I guess I did forget to mention that sometimes I can have a temper, and this sure wasn't helping. Still, when you're face to face with a possible home intruder, it's probably best to stay calm. After all, I had no idea of knowing if he had something hiding in his jacket pocket. Either way, I watch as he walks over to his car and takes off into the night. That should have been the end, but no, it was going to get worse. Once inside, with my food already cold, I called the police and described the strange activity outside my house. They arrive and take my statement, and they tell me they'll check out the area over the next couple of days. Ugh, it's like an hour later and I'm finally able to eat the food I've been waiting for. Anyways, fast forward to around 1 a.m. and I'm watching reruns of SpongeBob. Taylor had bought the complete first 3 seasons of it, so that's why. Hey, don't judge. Can't go wrong with classic episodes. Eventually, I get up to use the restroom and take a shower. As I'm changing, I begin to hear Bob barking in the living room. That was odd. Bob was always quiet, and he rarely barks at anyone, except of course for earlier in the night with that weird guy, which mind you, I'd already put behind me. That's when I'm able to hear knocking on the front living room window. Obviously, I'm confused at what's going on, so I step out with my towel, half expecting to see Bob playing with one of his toys. No, he's clawing and scratching at the back door, all the while the noises outside continue. Well, guess who I see through the window? Yup, you guessed it. Remember that SUV from earlier? Not only was it parked in my driveway, but there was somebody trying to open the window. Bob goes into protective mode and jumps in between the stranger and I. This guy was so startled by Bob that he jumps back startled, going back into his car and taking off. Again, I called officers and they searched around, but they found nothing. A week later, somebody's home was broken into and all other things were taken. But in the end, one thing is obvious. I'm pretty sure the same man was responsible. However, I never saw him again, so who knows? Story number 6. He was living here the entire time. This is something that happened almost a year ago, and I've been thinking about sharing it for the longest time. I wasn't too sure with who, but after discovering the creepy fox, I thought he would be the best to share it with. So let me get started by saying this. When you go into buying a new home, you should be excited. A new life and a new home? What else could you want? That's what I thought I was getting into after moving out of my parents' house in Anchorage. I've been with them up until the age of 27, and finally, I had enough money to be by myself. I guess the good thing about living in Alaska was the fact that homes weren't too expensive. With the down payment here and a move there, I settled into my new home in Wasilla in the middle of February. It was nice. I had a housewarming party and everything, and I invited all my friends to visit. One thing I did find weird, however, is I never paid too much attention to the small crawl space above the staircase. When I first did a tour of the home, the seller told me that it was just an empty storage space. He told me the previous owners had emptied it out, but I guess he never really bothered to check it out. Yep, you can probably already guess where this is going, but just be patient. At first, I never really noticed much happening at home. I worked all day and got home and relaxed, and then I went to sleep and started the process again. However, I did start to notice some things that were kind of unexplained. For starters, I would notice things I'd placed that had been moved somewhere else. Cups would be in different places, and my laptop would be moved around. Like I said, nothing too noticeable. It could have easily been explained away as me being forgetful. One night, however, my friend Alexis was staying over and visiting me for the weekend. We had stayed up late watching movies, and we finally went to bed at around 2 a.m. At one point, Alexis told me she got up at night after hearing what sounded like footsteps. I guess it's important to mention that I'm sort of a heavy sleeper. There could be a storm outside with loud wind, and I would sleep through the entire thing. Needless to say, Alexis thought I was the one walking around at night and ignored it. The next morning, she mentioned the footsteps she had heard. Hey, I know it's not really a big deal, but were you walking around last night? Sorry, it's just that I have trouble sleeping and I wake up to the smallest noises. Wait, really? No, I was fast asleep. You know me. Are you sure you weren't just hearing things? I'm positive. It sounded like somebody was walking downstairs in the kitchen. This gave me chills as I started thinking about the things that would be out of place or strangely going missing. Because of the things taking place, I did have CCTV cameras installed outside, so Alexis and I checked the cameras. Nothing. No signs of anyone on the property, and surely no signs of anyone trying to break into the house. A week or so passed, and I was starting to get really creeped out about the things taking place. Still, I couldn't explain what was going on and why things were missing. Well, one day at work I was feeling pretty sick, so I was able to get an early release. I stop by a ramen place to pick up some food, and I make my way back home. Here's where things got creepy. Once I open the door and step inside, I could see that small storage space above the staircase was open. You know which one, the one I never bothered to open. That's not what sent me running out of the house. As I nervously walk over to the kitchen, I'm able to hear something being moved. When I turn the corner, there they are. There is a man who looked like he had seen his better days, seemingly just eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on the table. Fight or flight kicks in, and I take off running, making my way to the car. Once inside, I call police who show up within minutes. They can't find him at first, but that's until they check that crawl space. Yup, he was hiding in there, and he probably thought nobody would be in there. So, the cups and other things that went missing? They were with him. Actually, it honestly looked like he had been living there for quite a while. It was dirty, and there were a bunch of old magazines and food wrappers everywhere. To think that this man had secretly been living there the whole time, made me furious more than scared. How was it that the seller never checked the living space? Well, once they questioned him, they found out that he had been living there for about a month, starting from when I first moved in. I guess he found the spare key underneath my door, and that's how he got inside. Oh, and in case you're wondering, he had memorized the times I was asleep or when I was at work, so he used this time to walk around, use the restroom, and eat from the kitchen. Yep, safe to say all the locks in the house were changed. But even with that, it took me many months before I was finally able to settle down from that. Story number 7. He was waiting for me. I myself haven't really had the most craziest experiences in the world, but there was a series of nights in particular that had me shaking. It took place about 10 years ago. I'm 30 now, but I was 20 years old, female, and living in a fairly quiet college town in the Pacific Northwest. The night this took place, there was a light snowfall beginning to cover the streets of my town, and I was looking forward to getting home. See, I was at work closing up for the night. I worked at a mom-and-pop pizza shop on this night, and it was my turn to close. About 15 minutes before closing, this man in a hoodie walks into the store wanting to know if he could use the restroom. I told him it was fine and went back to doing my typical routine. I figured that he would leave after he had finished and that be the end of it. Yep, I'm nice like that, so I didn't mind. However, just because I'm nice to you doesn't mean you have to ruin my night or my life. I'll get to that in a minute. So it's finally midnight and I'm ready to close this shop, but this man hasn't left. In fact, while I was closing, I was surprised to see him staring over at me the entire time. It did start to make me feel a bit uncomfortable, so I told him, "Sorry to kick you out like this, sir, but it's closing time. I gotta go home now."
Oh, is that so? Well, would you like me to take you home? Come on, follow me to my van and I'll get you there quickly. A pretty girl like you doesn't deserve to be out here in the snow alone.
Oh, I appreciate that, but I don't live that far. I'm training for a run, so I'll be jogging my way home. Hey, have a soda on the house as thanks for the offer. I figured that with the free soda, it might not make him as angry. Hey, I really didn't know what I was thinking. I've heard stories of people saying no to strangers only for them to get mad. Maybe this would cancel out his anger? I don't know. Anyways, he just heads out the door, but with one last look behind, he says,
I'll wait for you outside so we can walk to your house together, so don't take too long.
Great. This guy wasn't going to leave me alone, was he? Also, it's important to note that up until this point, I'd never seen him in my entire life. Why he chose to come here? I'm not sure, but he probably saw me and thought something like,
Oh yes, she's all mine. It's the middle of the night in a small town. Who's ever going to miss her?
Yeah, this would have been the time to call the police, which I do end up doing. I explained my situation, and they showed up about 5 minutes later. After talking with the guy, they let him go since there wasn't much they could do. But oh, you thought that was it? No, my friends, it's not over. Not by a long shot. That same evening, once I was home, I was getting ready for bed watching a bit of television. That's when I happened to look out my second-story bedroom window. On the street next to one of our old street lamps, I could see a figure standing next to it. They were barely illuminated by the dim light, but something about the person sent chills. Strangely enough, they looked to be wearing the same hoodie and ripped jeans like the man from the store. Luckily, my lights were turned off, so he couldn't see me, but then I was suddenly blinded with a flash of his cell phone. Great. So now he was taking pictures of my house? Regardless, he then walks down the street until he disappears into the night. I guess I should have called officers yet again, but I was so tired at this point. I figured there was an explanation for all of this. Nothing, however, could explain what I found on my door the next evening. Next evening, I was once again closing, but I had a friend of mine pick me up and drop me off at my house. When she dropped me off at my house, I noticed what looked to be like a box at the door. I was thinking that this was the textbook I had ordered online, but there was no label or anything indicating it was official. Instead, it simply said, "To Amanda." By the way, that's my name. All in all, I did find it weird, especially considering it didn't say who it was from. Perhaps a friend of mine had left it for me as a surprise. Curious, I head to the kitchen and I proceed to open it. But where do I even get started with what I found? To start off, there are a bunch of photos. Wait for it. Yep, pictures of me. They appear to be taken at weird angles, almost as if the photos were taken in secret and at a distance. The last couple of photos were the ones that sent chills. They were photos of my house. There was even a photo of my room and me sleeping. The scary part was that the photo was taken from inside my room, not on the outside. To think this guy had somehow managed to get inside my house was the scariest part, and that's when I remembered my kitchen window. I looked over to it, and it was wide open. This window has had issues locking, and I'm guessing that's how he got inside. Anyways, there was a letter along with everything, which I read, and it was something like this.
Since the first time I saw you, I fell in love with you. But why don't you love me back? Sorry, I just couldn't resist it, so I took photos I thought you might like. Maybe one day we can be together. I know, I'll just wait for you inside your closet. Anyways, I can't wait to see you later tonight so we can have so much fun.
I started to panic. Was this guy really in my house, and was he waiting to jump out once I was inside my room? I don't know, but I wasn't taking any chances. I called the police and I told them somebody had broken into my house. I step outside and they show up in about 5 minutes. Sure enough, he was hiding in my bedroom closet with some rope and tape. Just thinking about why he had that stuff on him, gave me nightmares for months on end. As an update, I moved back with my parents who were living in another state, and nothing like this has ever happened again. Story number 8. Fishing trip turns into a nightmare. This story was submitted to me a couple of years back when I first started this channel. I thought I would go ahead and include it as a throwback to the early days of the Creepy Fox. Let's get into it. Hey there, man. I'm a huge fan of your narrations. I'm hoping I'll get featured on your channel soon. So, to start you off, I'm a 24-year-old male, and I'm living in Michigan. It's nice out here, and in fact, I spent pretty much my entire life growing up about 30 minutes from Lake Michigan. Living near the lake and woods meant a lot of time out in the wilderness, but what I really enjoyed most was fishing. Anyways, I'll take you back to an encounter from about 4 years ago. At one point, I'd gotten a new job and I would drive an hour from where I lived to get there. It was at a sporting store, which frankly enough went along with what I enjoyed. I was there for maybe 2 weeks when I met my good friend Alex. Just like myself, he enjoyed fishing and would spend his weekend near the Allegan Woods. Hey, we should go out fishing sometime. You ever been to the Allegan Woods? No, never. Why? Are there any good spots there? You bet there are. I'm sure you know about the rainbow steelheads, right? Wait, don't tell me. You can find them there? Yeah, there's plenty of them in the rivers. Let's go sometime. I had never gone there before, so I jumped at the opportunity to fish somewhere new. So, the next weekend we set up a fishing trip and we make our way into the woods. Alex takes me to what he called the Horseshoe Bend, which was located on private property. Hey, Alex, that sign back there. It said no trespassing, private property. Are you sure we can be out here? Oh, that? Nah, dude, don't worry about it. I know the owner of this land. He gave us full permission to be here. Oh, that's actually pretty nice. Yeah, so this place should be all to ourselves, no need to worry. We spend the day out fishing, and for the most part, everything goes by fairly normal. Hey, Alex, do you think your friend might let me come fishing on my own here sometime? I know you're working all this week, so it would be nice to come back here during the weekdays. Yeah, no problem at all. I'll just make sure to let him know you'll be out here. Actually, you could stay at his house if you want. I know he's out of town, but I'll let him know that you're staying. That way you don't have to go all the way back home. Cool. So with that, I returned the next day. Oh, I should probably mention that the owner Marcus was also there. I met him for the first time and he was pretty nice. Anyways, it was about 8:30 p.m. and I was next to the lake fishing. All of a sudden, I was able to hear what sounded like a woodpecker. Strange, but whatever. There's animals out here in the woods. Then, I'm able to hear the sounds of grunting and branches breaking. I turned around, but I don't see anything. I returned back to fishing, thinking that maybe I just heard something. Then again, I can hear mumbling. Now, I forgot to mention this part, but apparently there's some crazy people who lived out here in these woods. At least, that's what my friend told me. He said they lived out in the deeper part of the woods and they would practice a whole bunch of weird and crazy things. On top of this, they were known to attack if you disturbed them. Even with that, I explained it away as a squirrel or other animal. Big mistake. After another 20 minutes of silence, I'm now getting up and I'm returning to my car. That's where I still had all my things since I hadn't gone to the house yet. I'm halfway to my car when all of a sudden I'm able to hear someone laughing like a madman. Lo and behold, to my shock, I'm able to see a man in dirty ripped clothing staring back at me from a small ledge above. Then I'm able to hear footsteps behind me. I turn around and there's another one that looks exactly the same. I don't know, but I guess the best way to describe them was they look like the people from that movie, The Hills Have Eyes. One thing was for sure, I could sense that these guys weren't all there, and they weren't here just to say hello. Well, instead of running to the car, I book it back to my friend's house where the owner Marcus was watching TV. We called the police and a couple of officers showed up. Sure enough, all of my fishing supplies had gone missing. Officers said they would look into it, but of course, nothing came up. I'm guessing they knew about those folk and didn't want to get anywhere near them. Not that I could really blame them. After all, it's the middle of nowhere in the deep woods. Update. A couple of days after, Marcus the owner calls me. Hey man, it's Marcus. How are you feeling? Well, a little bit better. Have you seen those strange people lately? Actually, that's what I was calling you for, so I could let you know what's up. Cool, so what's the update? Well, apparently this wasn't just a one-time thing. You see, I forgot to mention to you, but a couple of days before you and Alex came, something happened. Further in the woods, two fishermen had gone into an area that said no trespassing. It's not part of my land, so I don't ever bother going there. I guess they ended up stumbling upon this strange society, that's the best way I can describe them, and they ended up disturbing one of their meetings. They ended up taking their things before finally letting them go. My best guess was that they thought those two lived at my house, so they had come to check out my property. Strange, because I'd never seen them in my entire life. To this day, I've never returned back to those woods. Story number 9. Late Night in Downtown Colima. I've been listening a lot to these kinds of stories for a long time, and I have to say, they're quite helpful. I say this because they've made me a lot more aware of my surroundings. Admittedly, I used to be very naive and I almost fell for anything, but not after this happened. Oh yeah, and I'm one of your biggest fans from Mexico. I speak English too, so it's nice to listen to the stories. Muchas gracias por todos los videos que haces. Empezamos. So, just to give you a general idea of where I lived, I was living in Colima, Mexico. In case you're lost, Colima is the name of the state, and it just so happens that the city is also called Colima. Anyways, it was in 2017, and my friend and I had been out late at a party. We will call her Maria. Maria and I had ended up taking an Uber on our way to a party, but we decided that we would walk home after. You see, there was this park we wanted to go to where there was a coffee shop that was open late. They had a limited edition pumpkin spice drink that was only available during the month of October. Of course, with it being around 11 p.m., most folks are already in bed. You did see the occasional people walking about, but all in all, it was quiet. About halfway through our walk, we started to notice something. There was this group of men we passed by, and one of them called out to us.
Hey, muchachas, qué bonitas. ¿Por qué no pasan el noche con nosotros?
Or, in English,
Hey there, ladies, how beautiful. Why don't you spend the night with us?
We ended up ignoring them and we continued along the way. However, after a couple of blocks, I felt as if we were being followed. Sure enough, I turn around and I'm able to see those two following us at a fair distance away. I don't think they saw me turn around as they didn't seem to let off any sort of reaction. María, no miras para atrás, pero pienso que esos dos hombres nos están siguiendo. Hey, Maria, don't look behind us, but I think those two men are following us. We quickened our pace and we make our way to the coffee shop where we meet up with fellow coffee enthusiasts. Cool. From inside the shop, we can see the two seemingly walk by without ever looking into the store. We then spent another 30 minutes inside until we were almost certain those two had given up the chase. Just as a precaution, we called Uber again to take us home, even though it was only like a 10-minute walk. Soon enough, the phone tells us our driver is almost here, so we step out of the coffee shop. About a minute of standing there, we hear somebody call out to us. We turn around, and it's the two from earlier. They come walking up to us and began another conversation. My friend and I then start walking away, but that's not before one of them grabs my arm and says,
¿Qué pensabas? ¿Que te íbamos a dejar ir tan fácil? Ustedes dos nos van a acompañar esta noche. What did you two think? That we were going to let you go so easily? You two are going to accompany us tonight.
Finally, we can hear someone else yelling out to us, and it turns out to be an officer driving down the street. This guy immediately lets go and they both take off running. We thank the officer for his help, and he stays with us until our Uber arrives. Por favor, ten cuidado caminando en la noche. Ya ven que hay gente mala. Please be careful next time walking at night. I think you saw a perfect example of the bad people out at this time. And that was it. We make it back to my place, and we never see those two ever again. Story number 10. A personal scary story from the Creepy Fox. Hey, so I know a lot of you wanted me to include my own personal experience, so I thought I would go ahead and do just that as a bonus story. Here it is. This was something that happened back in 2017. It was February, and my sister and I were coming back from a running expo. My sister and I love and enjoy competing in half marathons, and this year was no different. See, we were competing in the Surf City Half Marathon in Huntington Beach, California. Anyways, the day there was spent like normal, and we're now just arriving home. Pulling up into our driveway, we noticed someone that sat on our porch. Now, it was at nighttime around 7 p.m., so we were unsure of who it was. My sister and I step out of our car, and we walk up thinking it might be our dad. But no, instead there's this weird guy who sat talking on his cell phone. Something about him seemed off, and it looked as if he wasn't all there either. Hi, excuse me, but were you looking for my mom or my dad? He just looks at us funny, almost as if he didn't understand what we were telling him. After about 10 seconds of awkward staring, it's like he finally snaps out of it and he says,
Oh, sorry, never mind.
Then he just walks down the street, stumbling back and forth. Okay, that was really weird. My sister and I head inside and we tell our parents about him. Hey, Mom, Dad, was one of your friends outside just now on the front porch? No, we don't have any guests over today. What are you talking about? Well, there was this really weird man outside. He looked homeless, but we weren't exactly sure. Safe to say they had no idea what we were talking about. That, however, wasn't the end of him. Fast forward, I'd say 4 months, and I was upstairs recording for a new video. As I'm recording, I get a call from my cousin. My cousin lives across the street and has a perfect view of my home. Hey, just to let you know, I think somebody's trying to open your front living room window. I'm looking at him right now from across the street. Do you know him? Wait, what do you mean? Nah, I don't have anyone over right now. I'm working. Well, you should probably go and check. He's acting really suspicious. So I make my way downstairs and I head over to the living room. As I get closer to the windows, I can hear what sounds like scratching. Sure enough, I opened the curtains to reveal this freaky man trying to open my window with a razor. What in the world are you doing? Are you trying to get inside my house or something? Admittedly, I was actually a bit scared since he had this razor trying to break the screen. I'll never forget the face he made. He started laughing and gave me the creepiest smile I'd ever seen. He then takes off running, heading over to my neighbor's house. Well, I call the local police and I tell them, "Hey, just to let you know, some guy just tried to break into my house and I think he's over at my neighbor's. Okay, we'll send somebody out right now to check things out. Just make sure to stay put and keep your doors and windows locked." I mean, I wasn't going anywhere else, was I? So I make my way upstairs and I look out the window. Guess where he was now? Yep, he was in my neighbor's backyard trying to break into the back door. Since I had a perfect view of him, I kept an eye on him the entire time. I yell out to him and he looks over to me. That's when he takes off and I head downstairs to see if I could find him. He was already gone. Officers show up about 10 minutes later and I gave them a description. In the meantime, one of them goes and searches the nearby neighborhoods. About 5 minutes later, they find him hiding in an alleyway. Once they return, the officer says, "Okay, is this the man you were talking about?" "Yeah, that's him. He was trying to break into my house just now and even the neighbors." They take him away and that was the last time I've ever seen him. Oh, and as it turned out, he had a history to him. Apparently, he had broken into somebody else's house in the past. It's been a couple of years since and I haven't seen him again. Story number 11. He opened my car door. So, I was just going to do 10 stories on today's episode, but I figured I would go ahead and squeeze one extra bonus story just for you all. Here it is. So, this just took place last week. As some background, I'm 19 years old and female, and I was just getting out of my classes this evening. Since my phone was on silent, I wasn't expecting to find all these messages from my mom. "Hey honey, sorry to bother you. I know you're in class. I need a huge favor from you. I ended up having to stay late at work to help out at the office, so I can't pick your brother up from soccer practice. Do you mind going and picking him up for me? I'll bring some pizza on the way home, so just make sure not to eat anything." I really didn't mind since my brother Jeffrey's school was only about 10 minutes from my college. I make the drive over and I wait for him in the parking. Note, it's around 7 p.m. and it's dark. I parked underneath a street lamp so that he could see where I was. Then I texted him and he told me to give him 20 minutes. Okay, no problem. I had my textbook with me and I figured I could do some quick studying in the meantime. I put my window down and I get to reading. I'd say about 3 minutes later, I noticed from the corner of my eye a car pull up next to mine. Weird, but I just assumed it was a parent picking up their kid from practice. However, after about 30 seconds, they back up and park behind me on the other side. Whatever, I guess they wanted to be on their own. Well, my brother, being the way he is with his friends, ends up taking longer than I expected. Suddenly, I see my phone vibrate and I look over to it. This was when I finally broke away from reading. As I pick up the phone and look out the passenger door window, there he was. There was this homeless man trying to open my passenger door. "Excuse me, sir, but did you need something?"
I just wanted to sit in there with you. You look lonely."
He had this creepy grin on him that just gave me bad vibes. Since the windows were halfway down, he reaches inside and tries to open it. I was shocked. Was he really doing this? Quickly, I turned the car on as he's successful in unlocking the door. He barely opens it and I take off as he jumps back. Well, he starts chasing after me and I'm forced to drive away. This was when I call my brother and tell him to meet me on the other side of his school. I call for help and describe the man, but they don't find him.